Ladies and gentlemen, please make very welcome Joshua Morotti.
So it's 8:30 in the morning and I'm driving down the ICB, about to arrive at a client's site for a day of engineering in my bright red, new-to-me sports car. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Now, cars have always been a really big part of my life. I enjoy driving cars, I enjoy racing them, I enjoy playing car video games, I talk race cars with my friends, I have race car wallpapers on my computer. It's a very big part of who I am. So as soon as I got my first real job, I went out and I had a luxurious Alfa Romeo station wagon to drive to work every day. And then I also had a sporty MX-5, it was a little sports car that was modified to take out on the racetrack on the weekends. And this was very, very cool. Also very, very impractical, because whenever you go to drive the other car, the battery is always flat. And it's very expensive because you've got 2 lots of rego, 2 lots of insurance, all of the running costs, and when one of them is an Alfa Romeo, the maintenance is excessive. And I also had to move house because I couldn't actually store the 2 cars effectively where I was. So I then had to rent a new place in the city where I could keep both of my cars so I could drive them to make it worthwhile having them. So eventually I decided to be sensible and decided that that probably wasn't a very sensible, cost-effective thing to do with my life. So I decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to simplify my life. I'm going to sell both of my cars and get a cheap, reliable hatchback so that I can get to work and save up for a house deposit. I wanted to put all that money I had in cars and put into a house deposit and be boring. So I did it. So I sold both of my cars and I bought a little blue Ford Fiesta hatchback, and it was going great. I had 6 months and I spent like nothing. Fuel was basically nothing, rego was nothing, insurance was nothing. It was just cheap. Until one day, driving sensibly along the highway, the gearbox explodes internally and immediately writes off the car on the spot. Now, I had a lot of choices when I was deciding what car to buy. I looked at really exciting things that I knew were going to be unreliable and expensive and painful, and I turned my back to them. And I bought a cheap, sensible little hatchback like anyone else would do, and then it just goes and blows up on me. So I did what anyone would do in that scenario, and I went out and bought myself a bright red Alfa Romeo GT V6 Sports Coupe. So here I am on the ICB at 8:30 driving into work. I've owned this car for about 5 weeks, and 3 of those weeks I actually didn't drive it because I was waiting for a part to come in to fix before it broke. But I was now comfortable driving it, and so I'm driving in, and then my radio turns off for a second. That's odd. And it comes back on again, and then the computer tells me that my stability control isn't working. And then all of the tacho starts dropping to 0 and back up again, and the ABS light comes on, and all of the lights are coming on and off, and the radio's coming on and off. And it is 8:30 in the morning in peak hour traffic on the ICB. There is nowhere to pull off at 8:30 in the morning on the ICB. So I turn the headlights off and turn the air conditioning off and the radio off and just turn everything off I can. The engine's kind of cutting in and cutting out, and I managed to limp it up to the exit, hoping not to stay at the traffic lights too long because it's still working at the moment. And I get out the front of the client site. And at this point in time, I would like to think, I am hoping that I'm just going to wait outside here for a second. I'm just going to turn off the car, turn it back on again, and everything's going to be good. But I didn't really want to risk doing that inside their site. And sure enough, I turn it off, and it does not turn back on again. It was an electrical problem of some description. Coming from my 2 car days, I just happened to carry a portable jump start kit with me, as you do. And so I tried that and it was no good. So me feeling really great about my sports car driving up there, now had to sit in front of work for the day until I waited for a tow truck afterwards. And so I of course knew all of the Alfa Romeo mechanics in Brisbane from my previous experience. And so during the course of the day on my lunch break, I called all of them up and asked for a quote to replace the alternator, which was what was wrong with the car. And come 5 o'clock, when I needed to call a tow truck and tell them where to send it, not one of the Alfa Romeo workshops had returned my call. There was none of the specialist workshops wanted to fix the alternator on my Alfa Romeo. So I thought the sensible thing to do at this point in time was to take it home. Like, I've pulled the alternator out on a Toyota and a Mazda, and it's like 6 bolts at the top of the engine, and you're like in and out in no time. And so it's like, okay, I'll just take it home and do it myself. So we get home, and it's at this stage I decide to look up how to change the alternator in an Alfa Romeo GT V6. It goes something like this. First, you jack it up. Take the wheels off. Take the front bumper off. Take the headlights out. Take the radiator off. Take the inlet manifold off. Take the front and the rear exhaust manifolds off. Take the drive shaft out, the suspension out, the brakes off the driver's side, a few bits underneath, and then you can remove the 3 bolts to the alternator. And so we decided that this was absolutely ridiculous and we were not going to do this. This was quoted something like 14 hours with 2 proper mechanics in a workshop. And so we decided the easy way to do this is just to kind of reach an arm in there and try and take it off. And so we spent a couple of weekends trying this, and the last bolt is threaded, so can't do anything about it. And so we decided the other cheat way, which wasn't much easier anyway. It was removing the entire subframe under the engine. So it was like everything under the engine came out, including the drive shaft, the suspension, everything the engine mounts to, everything. And this was a pretty big project by this point. By this stage I had to commandeer a car off one of my friends because it had been about 7 weeks and I had no way of getting to work. And so this is really cheap, sensible house savings for culture, guys. So we eventually start putting it back together. Of the 12 weeks I've owned the car, 7 weeks of them have been on the driveway, and we get it back together. And truth be told, it took about the last 3 bolts probably took me about a week and a half because I did not want to take any chances. I did not want to touch this thing again. I did not want to make any risks at all. So it's about 9 o'clock at night, we get it sat back down, go to turn the key, and it purrs beautifully into life. And the relief was enormous. And so as late at night, I just thought we'll just take it for a quick run around the block. I go to turn on the headlights, and nothing. I'd just been messing with the electrical system of my car, and suddenly the headlights don't work, the radio doesn't light up, none of the lights in the car are working. And so I do the only thing I know what to do, and I turn them off, and on again, and off, and on again, and nothing. And so I move the car forward a bit because maybe that will work, and turn it off. And by this stage, I'm just freaking out. I am so over it. It has been 7 weeks. This has been all I have done for the last 7 weeks is try and fix this car. And it is that point that I realised that I was turning on and off my intermittent wipers and my headlights were on the other stall. So it just goes to show, no matter how much effort you put in, no matter how much research you do and how smart and good you feel about yourself, you might still be the person that forgets what side of the steering wheel their headlights are on.